Alrighty, y'all. So, over the past week, there's been a lot of Love is Blind drama. The tea runneth over. So, let's kind of catch you up on what you might have missed. Jeramey was engaged 2 weeks prior to filming and then apparently broke it off before filming began. Jimmy claimed that Jessica got a good edit, which I'm sure is not going to elicit a response from her, right? And then there's the not-so-incredible Hulk Trevor himself, who was reportedly in a serious relationship during filming. Yeah, and that's just like 3 examples. But we have a lot more examples today because if you thought the drama stopped there, oh boy, do I have some news for you. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review of Love is Blind Week 3, guys. I cannot believe we're already in Week 3 of Love is Blind, but I'm excited to dive into just 2 episodes today, 10 and 11. Trust me, it's maybe just 2 episodes, but there's a lot to discuss. Now, hey, you're going to want to stay subscribed or get subscribed to the channel right now because next week we're diving into my predictions for who says yes and who says no at the altar, and next Wednesday it's wedding day. But also the following week, March 13th, there's the reunion that we're going to be covering right here on the channel. So trust me, get subscribed, like this video, and let me know down below in the comments as we go on what you think of this week's episodes and which moment was your favorite. Yeah, guys, there's so much to talk about. And of course, just like always, there are time codes below in case you don't want to get spoiled if you have not yet watched all 2 episodes. So hey, right now, let's begin with my spoiler-free thoughts. Now, if you had to ask me which week was stronger, week 2 or week 3, well, I'd probably go with week 2. Even though they had an extra episode to play with, everything technically speaking felt stronger, more refined. The editing in week 2 definitely added a lot to the tension like we spoke about, but the editing here in week 3 was probably the weakest of the season. There were so many unnatural cuts at different points in conversations, or there would be a montage of ice sculpting, for example, and then they go right to a conversation with our engaged couple, and it felt very jarring, a little choppy, and maybe they're just trying to rush to weddings, but there were some important moments that I feel they didn't highlight, or maybe it was just that boring. I'm gonna go with the former though, that they just chose to focus on other things, and it did kind of harm the final product. And I'm thinking of the tuxedo shopping and wedding dress shopping, jump cuts. It just never felt good this week. Now, does that mean this week's episodes were not entertaining? Absolutely not, because this week probably had the most drama to work with in its favor. And I'm talking about a lot of stuff off camera too. So that really aids what you're gonna see today, because there are plenty of moments that made me holler, laugh, and maybe even scratch my head because of what we know off camera. Now, I'm not getting into any spoilers, of course, of who gets married, but there were news headlines going around, guys, when it comes to Jeramey, Jimmy, and Trevor. So that all, of course, helped make episodes 10 and 11 that much more tense, and the stakes felt pretty high, especially during one of the biggest arguments I think we've seen on screen yet. So I say all that to say this: if you're a fan, if you've been riding strong with season 6 so far, week 3 is gonna be a treat for you, and I actually really enjoyed my time with it, as much as it was really just so, like, you could just tell some characters, some contestants are just snakes. Like, I'm telling y'all, like, y'all told me Laura's not a snake. Maybe she's not as much a snake in week 3 as she was in week 2, but some snakes do appear, guys, and one of them is a brand new snake, I guess. That shows up at this couple's meetup. So you know what, I really don't want to waste any more time. I want to dive right into my spoiler recap. So this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched episodes 10 and 11, go ahead, get subscribed down below in the channel, and then come back. Let me know what you think, because I really want to hear from you guys which moment felt the most dramatic and was your favorite from week 3. So alrighty, guys, let's get into my spoiler recap. There are only 2 weeks until weddings, everyone, so let's go ahead and check in with all of our couples in Charlotte. Now remember, Kenneth and Brittany are no longer together, and rumor has it that he has yet to look up from his iPhone and make eye contact with anyone since breaking up with her. Okay, maybe that's not a real rumor, but let's throw the pot anyway. So the first couple I want to check in with is AD and Clay, guys, because Clay is now meeting AD's mom, and that's a big deal for AD, it seems, because the connection she has with her mom, pretty genuine. Before Clay could even arrive to their lunch date, AD mentions to her mom that she hasn't seen Clay since yesterday afternoon, and AD does sound upset about that. Listen, they still gotta work through their scheduling issues when it comes to their work-life balance, as we learned in week 2. Will that be make or break for AD? It could, but once we get through this meeting, it sounds like AD is all day. She's Clay, she's on board. AD explains to her mom how she set up a really cute date night for her and Clay with thoughtful gifts and DIY projects, and he still hasn't been home to see it. Yikes. But hey, who cares about that, because Clay finally arrives, and the air is a little awkward because you can tell AD's mom is kind of upset about hearing this. My daughter hasn't seen her fiance in maybe 24 hours, and my daughter had a really cute date night set up and he didn't even acknowledge it? Like, what's going on here? But hey, at least Clay doesn't say anything that makes it more awkward. Yeah, no, he says something dumb. So Clay mentions that AD doesn't like his work schedule, which, to be honest, it does sound like he's hardly home. And I noticed that AD's mom gave off this vibe that she's not okay with him right now. She was not okay with that comment either. So all things seem to be going south until Clay sort of opens up and talks more about his struggles, guys. That man has been in his head for a while now. Clay brings up yet again that he's struggling with whether he can give AD everything she's asking for in a marriage. Like, homie, either you need internal healing from past trauma, or you're really trying to find any excuse to get out of this engagement. So at this point, Clay does what he does best. He gets up and leaves to go use the restroom. So AD eventually has another heart-to-heart with her mom, and she says something that actually kind of surprised me after all this. She said, "I could see myself following Clay." Well, girl, if that happened, we'd never see either of you on camera. AD continues and mentions, "Is he not gorgeous, Mom?" Like, okay, listen, we understand that AD's enamored with Clay's looks, but right now, I think it's more so about the fact that Clay D has a... Did I just say Clay D? Oh gosh. I meant that Clay needs a lot of internal work to be done on himself first to make him a good husband to AD. Like, AD... Don't settle here? Yeah, don't do that. And then AD tells her mom, quote, "I'd jump off a cliff for him because I know he'd be there to catch me. But will he catch you in a situation like that?" I don't know about all that, y'all. And then AD has a touching moment again with her mom, and they hug it out. And listen, once Clay comes back, Clay mentions, "I'd fight for AD too." And then the music kicks up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. But this was a lot to unpack, y'all, and I don't know if this is necessarily positive for their relationship. Oh, and then AD's mom calls them Barack and Michelle Obama. I don't know about all that. But hey, hype me up, Mom, right? Okay, so now when we get back to their home, AD and Clay are talking about their wedding day, right? Apparently AD's sisters are coming to the dress fitting this weekend, and they apparently filled out their wedding license as well. And Clay says this was the easiest application he's ever had to fill out, and everything seems to be going swimmingly until this. Clay once again brings up his dad cheating, and bro, please, you have to grow out of this or just get a therapist, or both. Please, for the sake of your relationship. And AD, bless her heart, is doing everything she can to reassure Clay, yet he's still in his head. And then Clay mentions about their wedding and the wedding date. Like, why are we focused on a date? Because you need to set a date to get married. You just can't do that out in the ether. So Clay apparently wants to push back their wedding date. Now, that's cold feet if I've ever seen one, or seen a pair of cold feet, because, yo, that's not great. So this worries AD, and rightfully so. So she throws out what she thinks of this scenario, and if Clay says no at the altar on their wedding date, she said, "I can't date you anymore after that point." And then Clay does his trademark, wow, that's a lot to take it, wow. Like, bro, of course, if you say no to her at the altar and embarrass her on her wedding day, like, that's it. Like, there's nothing else that we could do from that point on, right? I mean, am I dumb here, guys? Does anyone else agree with me? Alrighty, so we'll come back to AD and Clay eventually, but now we gotta move on to Laura and Jeramey sitting in a tree. Fighting. Is that how their song goes? I think so, because at this point, they're fighting. So you remember last week where Jeramey got called out by Laura for apparently being out at a bar until 5 in the morning and then driving Sarah Ann home with his location settings turned on. Oh, and he tried to lie about it. Oh gosh, Jeramey, just Man, I don't know. I don't know about Jeramey, but Jeramey and his mother appear this week, and they're having a conversation at the dog park with one dog, and that's their dog. Jeramey again explains to his mom, hey, I drove Sarah Ann home, and that's all that happened. But Jeremy's mom was funny, because she said, you're lucky it wasn't me. She's about her business. And it's a short conversation for all intents and purposes, but Jeremy's mom ends by saying this, well, at least you always have Layla. And Layla's the dog. And that's all he's gonna have at the end of this week. But you know who's not gonna be alone at the end of this week? Amy and Johnny, because they're the strongest couple, and hey, they're my number one. So let's go ahead and talk about Johnny meeting Amy's dad, which is basically make or break for Amy if I had to bet. We know that Amy really values her dad's opinion, and Amy's dad, like we heard, I think this was last week actually, Amy's dad is not approving of this whole process, and he's very against this Love is Blind experiment. So I was very curious to see how this would play out, but Amy's dad seems really sweet, you guys, and he clearly loves Amy a whole lot, and that's very heartwarming to see. They have a really nice conversation when Johnny then asks for Amy's dad's blessing to marry her, and he says yes. He says yes, man. Like, come on. Imagine if he said no. I mean, I could imagine that because it's not the craziest thing we've seen on Love is Blind. But Johnny seems like a really good guy, right? And Amy seems very clearly in love and happy with their relationship. So, man, it just all came together very well in this moment. And the editing, to be honest, probably did a disservice to this entire moment because it felt very quick, abrupt, and nothing really lingered. Like, we've got time. Like, maybe they should just give us more time with a couple that is actually going to sort of help tell the story of Love is Blind instead of focusing on Laura about to claw Jeramey's face out. Speaking of clawing people's faces, let's get into Chelsea and Jimmy and check in on them. So first, we gotta talk about Chelsea meeting Jimmy's family. They all arrive at a smokehouse. I mean, either they're gonna let the food get cold on the table or they're really gonna talk and eat. But it seems like that food's getting cold. And Jimmy's mom has a conversation with everyone. They're all talking. Jimmy's mom seems to be the most expressive of Jimmy's family. And then she makes a comment that I admittedly laughed at, even though I don't know why, because I'm also in my 30s. Jimmy's mom says to Chelsea, "You're 30? Wow." And I guess she was surprised, but Jimmy's only like, what, 2 years younger at this point? Like, that's not a big age difference. But don't worry, Jimmy's mom is not petty or shady. She actually says that she can see their connection together, but I know I have glasses, but I can't see it. Maybe she's being generous here. However, Jimmy's parents eventually say straight up, outright, especially her dad, I approve, I like her, go forth and be wed. Well, maybe, because they get into arguably their biggest tiff yet. I mean, the argument they get into, y'all, is bad. So that same night after they leave the smokehouse where no one knows if they've eaten any food, they're back at home. And Jimmy opens up to Chelsea and says, man, I love you even more after getting my family's approval. But Chelsea took that as an invitation to grill Jimmy on things that didn't really feel necessary. Maybe there was like one thing that I could agree with Chelsea on, but the others, not so much. So Chelsea immediately turns the conversation on its head and says this, I was so cranky with you this morning. Where did that come from? Well, it came from this. Apparently, there's drama about Jimmy going to a bar with his friends. And remember, he's got 2 really good girlfriends. And I told y'all it was weird last week, and it's gonna sound more weird this week. So apparently Mackenzie from the pods apparently saw Jimmy at this same bar and texted Chelsea, oh, where are you? Well, Chelsea was clearly upset about getting a text like that from Mackenzie. However, Chelsea admits, guys, that she wanted to stay in bed, and she told Mackenzie, I don't want to be out, I want to be home. And Jimmy told us on camera, well, us, but, you know, said in the conversation with Chelsea, hey, I asked you if you wanted to go out, and you said no. So Chelsea can't be too mad about not going out with Jimmy. Chelsea's immaturity here is annoying me, but it gets worse. Chelsea then rambles on and says she doesn't want to be with someone who drinks and parties, to which Jimmy says, yo, I had 1 drink and then I came home. And Chelsea even acknowledged earlier in the conversation that he was not gone for a long time. So like, Chelsea, what are we doing here? I think Chelsea was 3 sheets to the wind in this conversation and 1 or 2 scotches deep. I'm telling y'all. So Chelsea asks again, is this something I want to deal with? How annoying, guys. But it was around here that it clicked, of course, that Chelsea is not in her right frame of mind, but that doesn't excuse this next part. Chelsea adds gasoline to the fire and says, if this is the person Jimmy is, she doesn't want to be with him. Listen, Chelsea, you ain't standing on business. You're standing on a rocky foundation right now, because are you about to blow up your engagement based off a really bad hunch? So Jimmy is frustrated, rightfully so, gets up and leaves the room, and then Chelsea asks, where do you go when you work? When you're not home? Doesn't Jimmy, when he works remote, and then when he's not home, he told Chelsea, I'm going to a bar. Do you want to come? No? Okay, I'm going. Weird. But apparently, Jimmy, this was probably a little bit immature of him, but he asks the question, do you want me to take a step back from hanging out with my friends who are girls? You know, those friends. Chelsea says yes, and then Jimmy quickly snaps and says, I'm not willing to take a step back. Mans is fed up. But then Chelsea spills some tea, and this is the part where I can understand her anger, where she says, Jimmy, you told me that you had slept with one of your girlfriends, the ones that you introduced me with. And this was probably years ago, but Jimmy's like, yo, Chelsea, we were not supposed to talk about this on camera. I asked you not to talk about this on camera. But what's done in the dark will eventually come to light, Jimmy. So apparently, yeah, Jimmy did sleep with one of his friends who are girls that we were introduced to last week, who knew a lot about his private life. This is awkward. But then Chelsea goes and ruins her argument by saying, I heard you were with Jessica. And then Jimmy says, yo, bro, I think you're just insecure about the whole Jess thing. So I don't think Jimmy was with Jessica. But Chelsea does question what she's done by saying yes to Jimmy based off this conversation. And then Jimmy said what all of America was thinking. You're drunk. And there are 2 things you can't tell Chelsea, that she's clingy and that she's drunk apparently, because this sets her off, and she says, Jimmy, you're full of it and you don't care about me. So Jimmy said, if you feel that way, I don't want to be with you either. Jimmy's walking out the room and says, it's not going to work, Chelsea. And at this point I'm thinking, alright, well, we're going to axe this couple. So cut to the day after their worst fight yet, and Jimmy says he doesn't trust Chelsea's judgment anymore and doesn't want to marry Chelsea. Someone called Paul Bunyan, because the axe is coming out, right? Well, maybe not. And Chelsea apologizes, and after a grand total of 10 minutes, Jimmy forgives her, and Chelsea said, well, it wasn't just me when we were treating each other poorly. So Chelsea said, okay, listen, I did fall in love with you more during the argument. You know, usually you hear people say things like, I fell in love with my partner more after they did this for me, and it was a kind gesture or a thoughtful gift or a beautiful date. But an argument like that, girl, if that's what gets you to fall in love with your man more, that's going to be the start of a toxic marriage. So eventually Jimmy has to make a decision, right? And he's thinking hard about what he wants to do. And eventually says that he's saying he will try because he loves Chelsea. Whew. So from that bit of drama, we're going to get into the most dramatic couples meetup yet. This is couples meetup number... wait, I kind of lost track. But what I didn't lose track of is the fact that there are 10 days until weddings. So at this point, you would think everyone's pretty secure, they're safe. But y'all, when I tell you guys the producers were producering, they knew what they were doing, because this guest list is crazy. Okay, so here are my notes. Laura is running to Chelsea to give her a hug right at the beginning when she arrives without Jeramey, when she knows good and well she was being a snake with Jessica and trying to stir the pot with Jimmy. And I know y'all told me Laura's not a snake, but in that moment she was. And I noticed throughout like the intros, Clay is apparently not there. AD shows up alone just like Laura, and Clay is apparently working, so he's not there right away. I can imagine AD's not very happy with that. So everyone's getting settled in, the boys are grilling, the girls are gossiping, and a moment happens where, well, I'll just call it the scrunchie of truth moment. It was interesting because basically whoever has the scrunchie has to tell the truth. Take that, Wonder Woman. Lasso of truth, I raise you one scrunchie of truth. But guys, this is just a lot of drama, y'all. And I didn't expect Amy to get in the mix on this. Amy brings up the fact that Jeramey is not there, and she's heard about this whole Jeramey and Sarah Ann tea. I did not expect this from Amy, but it did start up a lot of things because Laura expresses how much she hates Sarah Ann. Like, I have no doubt if they had boxing gloves on, they go half around. To which Chelsea then replies to Laura, "He ain't it, sis." Like, Chelsea, no. Not during Black History Month, and it's a leap year, so there's an extra day. Don't do that. But call upon Jeramey's name and he shall appear, because Jeramey shows up in the middle of their conversation and adds to the insane amount of tension and awkwardness. Jeramey tells, I believe it was Jimmy at this point, that Laura is the exact person I didn't want to see anymore. But he uses another word in there too that I'm not going to say on camera because I don't curse. So, yeah, yikes. That's bad. Apparently they haven't seen each other in 4 days, and Jeramey believes that he's been made out to be the bad guy. But bro, you did what you did. And then Laura reveals that Jeramey's name in her phone went from fiance to Jeramey. Yeah, she's checked out. And meanwhile, Johnny's sitting back like, yup, okay. This man is chilling. I love those petty cuts to Johnny, just to show how secure he is with him and Amy and their relationship. Alrighty, so the next person to show up is none other than the not-so-incredible Hulk himself, Trevor. Now this is crazy amidst all the tea. I know we talked about it in the cold open for this recap, but that man was in a relationship during filming, and he wants to come in here and try to break up marriages, so let's get into it. Chelsea, of course, immediately says he looks like a beefcake, I think it was, and that he looks good, and that she only goes after guys like him in the real world. If only she knew. That man don't like you. That man was never interested in you. He just wanted screen time. So the drama, of course, does not stop there with introductions to this couple's meetup, because guess who's up next? That's right, Mackenzie and Jessica. The producers clearly know what they're doing, and then Clay shows up after them and the crowd goes mild. But let's go back to Jessica. Jessica said she had to hold her breath when she hugged Jimmy, you know, that little church hug, and that's very telling to me. Whether she's playing this up for the cameras or not, it is weird, right? Like, she still likes Jimmy, but Jimmy's not, it doesn't seem like Jimmy's reciprocating that. Until a little bit later in the couple's meetup, y'all thought, yeah, no, I'm not going to play it up anymore. I think Jimmy's still interested. But before we get to their conversation, we cut back to Laura, who says, I'm not wearing my ring anymore, and she won't give the ring back if Jeramey asks. Yeah, she's mad. So of course, now they're laying the foundation for this transition to the Jimmy and Jessica conversation. But in a Jimmy testimonial interview, he mentions that he's attracted to Jessica still. And that a lot is on his mind. And if you can't tell, it sounds like he's having second thoughts. So now it's time for Jimmy and Jessica's conversation. They're hashing out what happened in the pods and how Jimmy basically had Jessica as his number one until the very end. And of course Jessica doesn't want to hear that because she spilled her heart out to this man and he said, no, I'm going to go with Chelsea. But eventually Jessica, she displays a lot of civility in this moment. She says, I'm happy, I wish you guys nothing but the best. But after she says that, there was an awkward moment because she says, I want you, pause, to be good to her. And that threw me for a loop because the way it sounded was like, I want you. So I literally paused it and I'm like, who can I text about this? Oh, I can't, I'm under embargo. But still, you know what I mean? Like, wow. But then when Jimmy hears Jessica say she's Jimmy's ex, he asks, are you an ex? And he even says he gets nervous around her. Listen, this man still likes Jessica and you cannot convince me otherwise. Somebody get this man an EpiPen. So the conversation ends with Jessica saying, I'm happy again for you and Chelsea. But we know what seed has been planted, y'all. And just when you think the producers are done after this conversation, Alejandra and Sarah Ann herself show up to the party. More on Sarah Ann in a little bit. They don't do anything with Alejandra. So Trevor and Chelsea. Now, predictably, of course, they have a conversation, but it's kind of weird. And of course, throughout this conversation, I can't take Trevor seriously because of all the tea surrounding him being in a relationship during filming. So Trevor starts off the conversation by saying, well, that was a good learning experience, meaning his time in the pods with Chelsea, and yeah, I'm sure it was, buddy. And then Trevor starts to harp on the fact that Chelsea's engagement with Jimmy just doesn't make sense to her. And Chelsea said after Trevor asked her again at this couples meetup, hey, if I went to you first and asked you first, would you say yes? And Chelsea said, no, I still say yes to Jimmy and Jimmy only. But my question for you, real family, do we believe her? Because Chelsea continues to tell Trevor life with him would be fun, only adding to the doubt in my mind that she'd say no if Trevor asked first. I think she would have said yes. And then Trevor says, well, couples really shouldn't be at each other's throats here, implying that Chelsea picked the wrong person and Jimmy because they had a big argument. He's stirring the pot so much. And then Chelsea admits, well, actually, I don't know if it was her or the Jack and Coke talking, that it's hard to not think of Trevor sometimes. Like, girl, what? It's hard not to think of the person who you said no to sometimes? Listen, between Chelsea and Jimmy, liking other people at this point, I don't know what to think, y'all. Maybe they should just split and then Chelsea should go with Trevor. Well, she kind of can't. And then Jimmy should go with Jessica, which also might not happen. And then right before the conversation ends, Trevor says, hey, I still have the bracelet, Chelsea, that you gave me in the pods. You know, the one where if you tap a button, I can feel it because that means you're thinking of me. Someone call up Mose because this man is trying to be a home wrecker so bad. What are we doing, Trevor? My goodness, alrighty. Well, right after that, Chelsea and Jimmy naturally have another little tiff because Chelsea mentions, look at all the couples. Amy and Johnny's the strongest couple. And then Jimmy, while he's eating a hot dog, says, what, you don't think we're the strongest couple? Haha, nah, I'm kidding, babe. But I'm serious, you don't think we're the strongest? No, I'm kidding. But for real though. Alrighty, no more fun and games. Time for more drama because Jeramey and Laura finally have a convo of their own, guys. And Laura tells Jeramey a lot about himself. She says, you're a con artist, and man, she's just like unloading on him at this point. Like, she knew this was like the final conversation they'd probably have, because at one point Laura's fed up and says, you know what, we're done. I'm just gonna come and pick up the rest of my stuff from your house. But Jeramey said, don't worry about it. I packed it up and it's sitting at the front of the house. Laura then says, I don't like that. You should go and kick rocks with open-toed shoes, and leaves the conversation. Oh my goodness. Someone call a podiatrist for Jeramey. But yeah, so after that, the cameras cut to AD and Sarah Ann having a conversation on a balcony, and I'm like, please don't fall off this ledge. Well, it's like not a balcony, it's like a mini balcony, but please, yeah, don't fall. So AD calls out Sarah Ann's DM and says, yo, this is wrong. Like, you knew he was a whole engaged man. AD's coming at Sarah Ann a little strong here, though, and it's because she's Team Laura. She even says it herself. But Sarah Ann tells AD, I don't see anything wrong with the DM that I made to Jeramey. If Delusional had a name, it might be Sarah Ann. Because Sarah Ann, girl, you know what you were doing with that DM. She eventually then adds and says, listen, I sent it partly because Jeramey left the door open. Did he? Yeah, actually he might have. Sarah Ann's trying to provide her side of the story here, and saying that on the night with Jeramey, man, he just dropped me off at my house and he didn't go inside. I don't believe any of this though. And then Sarah says, finally, yo, AD, you have a vengeance towards me, which I actually agree with. I do think AD has a vengeance towards Sarah Ann. So what do the producers do next? They pair up Sarah Ann and Jeramey. They're having a convo, guys, because the tea spilleth over. Might as well get them to talk together. And of course everyone can see this, so Laura's again not very happy and starts to cry. But Sarah Ann says, listen, Jeramey, I'm not wrong for sending that message to you. Everyone's trying to make me the villain. What? I can't believe it. Girl, self-awareness. You need to work on it. So again, I'm not buying anything of what Sarah Ann's saying. And Sarah said, listen, I'm not sorry. And Jeramey said, well, you shouldn't be sorry. And hey, two peas in a pod, I guess they're made for each other. And then Jeramey says what I was wondering if he would say eventually in this conversation, which is, I think I made the wrong decision in the pods, implying, you guessed it, that he should have went with Sarah Ann, which of course adds a lot to the situation at hand, because it basically gives Laura Ann more evidence. Did I say Laura Ann? Whoops. It gives Laura more evidence that, yeah, they probably hooked up that night. And you know what? They probably did. But whether they did or not, it's still inappropriate. And then, you know what Jeramey says? Let's go jet skiing together. And they act like nothing's ever happening. There are no dolphins, so of course Kenneth is not present. But they're going jet skiing, and Laura, I know, is heated. So Laura ends the couple's meetup by saying, I will never see or speak to Jeramey again. But there's a reunion. You're probably going to see him there. Alrighty guys, so now we're getting really close to wedding day, and there are some final dates and conversations happening, so let's check in on our couples like AD and Clay, who are making custom sneakers. It's a cute date, and I wonder if they're going to bring these sneakers out at the reception, if they of course say yes at the altar. I guess that's the plan, but it looked really cute, and you know what? It'd be really cool to make custom sneakers with my partner. That'd be dope. Amy and Johnny, on the other hand, are doing wedding planning, and Johnny is so darn supportive of Amy's ideas. You love to see a supportive fiance. And then Johnny brings up birth control again. So went from good to serious very fast. And eventually they start to almost find common ground on the birth control topic, where Amy's considering birth control, and Johnny just had to explain what a vasectomy was on camera too. I mean, I was watching that and I was squirming in pain. But yeah, no. It seems like they're finding some middle ground on this topic that's kind of been lingering over from week 2. And lastly, Chelsea and Jimmy are making wedding arrangements, so they said, hey, we want an ice sculpture for the wedding. So cue the ice sculpture montage. You know, they're chainsawing, they're picking the ice. Yeah, it's crazy cool, right? Sort of. I'm just surprised it didn't melt. But Jimmy says, listen, I'm 100% confident that Chelsea's my person, because I don't know where that came from, but that man is all the way in, apparently. And then editing is really weird here, like we mentioned earlier, because they go from the ice sculpture montage to a serious convo where they express their love, once again, to one another. I don't know. So it's time for the inevitable dress shopping and tuxedo shopping segments, you guys. Vanessa Lachey shows up at the dress shopping place and surprisingly doesn't immediately ask about Love is Blind babies. That was a shocker. Amy's mom is there and so many other family members and loved ones are there, but Amy's mom is so sweet. However, she does say it's hard to digest, or a lot to digest, I should say, with her daughter getting married through this experiment. I get it. However, still, she's sweet. So Chelsea's coming out first, but before that, she explains that she didn't experience dress shopping with her first marriage when she was 18 years old because she bought a, I think, $100 dress or something like that on eBay. I'm really not judging, no, I'm just making the comment because of what she said. So she was clearly happy about this, and she comes out in her dress and she's smiling cheek to cheek, and boy, do they linger on her moment long. Like, longer, I think, than the other contestants, because I don't know why. I actually don't even have a reason for you. And then AD comes out second, and her dresses aren't bad, but the way that AD is describing she wants her dress to make Clay feel, it feels like they're not giving. You know what I mean? She wants to make Clay's jaw drop and make him cry and whatnot, and if that's the case, I feel like the dress maybe would have been more expressive than what it turned out to be. But it might change again in the final week of Love is Blind. We've seen dresses and tuxedos change in the past. But then there was this one moment where her veil, what do they call it? A train, where it says "till death do us part" on this, and she was like so excited, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, and then she says, "till death do us part." I'm like, I rebuke that. Whatever that is, I rebuke it. Take that out. Whoa, boy. And then Amy comes out third and is crying. She's emotional. She is so excited, clearly. And they give Amy this very good edit in this moment. And it makes it feel like, yeah, they almost were, quote unquote, saving the best couple for last. But I gotta ask y'all, and let me know in the comments below, is it bad that I don't think any of the dresses were, like, amazing? Like, none of them floored me. But again, I'm a guy. I don't have that perspective, but ladies of Love is Blind fandom, let me know down below in the comments, did any of these dresses work for you? And now with the guys at tuxedo shopping, there's really nothing to talk about because they cut this segment incredibly short, but Nick Lachey has an awkward moment and says, guys, come join me, and all the guys are like, what? That made me laugh. But this is probably the most I've heard Jimmy tell everyone publicly that he's confident in Chelsea. This is my person. He's saying I'm 100% in. I'm Xenia's at the altar, basically. We'll see. But the guys barely get screen time here. There's really nothing to take away. I'm serious. There's nothing to take away. Jimmy does mention that he's profusely sweating already, though, and he's going to need to take his tuxedo to the dry cleaner. So, we'll see what happens if they have an outdoor wedding. And we only got a few more notes left to go, you guys, because there's 4 days until weddings, and AD and Clay are going on a date that Clay set up for them. But I wonder, did Clay see AD's date that she set up for him? We'll never know. And then Amy and Johnny go glamping, and honestly, they're really cute together. They're my #1 couple, guys. I think they're gonna make it. Everyone else, though, the jury's still out. And then there's 3 days until weddings, and we check in on Chelsea and Jimmy, and they're at a theme park, and it's totally empty because they're the only ones there. And, well, you have to imagine the annual pass holders are standing off to the side thinking, I paid for this day, and I can't get in. Hopefully they got reimbursed. We'll see. But the way everything is packaged together for their segment feels so incredibly cheesy. And eventually we get to the drama because Jimmy asks Chelsea at the end of the night, "Where are you at with your answer at the altar?" And then Chelsea does one of these cliffhanger ending. Cut to black coming up montage that I didn't watch because I try to go in cold for the next episodes. But y'all, that's it for week 3 of Love is Blind. We made it, y'all. That was actually fun. These episodes, again, super dramatic, very entertaining. If you're already at this point in season 6, what are you doing by not even subscribing, by the way, to this channel? Because, like I mentioned, next week, it's time to talk about my predictions for the weddings and who says yes and no at the altar. And it's time to talk about, next week on Wednesday, the weddings themselves, because I cannot wait. If I had to make a guess, there's going to be some drama at this wedding, because it would be kind of hilarious if, you know, the officiant says, "Speak now or forever hold your peace," and then Jessica comes out of nowhere and says, "Jimmy, I'm speaking now and not forever holding my peace." So, be hilarious. I don't know if it happens. But yeah, guys, again, thanks so much for sticking with me. Another week of Love is Blind in the books. And yeah, I can't wait for what's ahead. But this week, yeah, I'm talking about some movies. We got Dune Part 2, my review coming out. It can't wait. And maybe some more Love is Blind talk if there's more drama over the weekend. We'll see. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you at the next screening. Oh, alrighty, that was fun. I need water. No, actually, maybe some tea. Yeah, more tea.